Okay, today on the channel, we've got something very exciting. I've got Vishal Kumar here, the CEO and founder of the new Alice camera. Hey, Vishal, how you doing?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Really great to be chatting to you about the Alice camera and learning a bit more about editor's keys and engaging with your audience.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks so much for joining us. It's so cool. If you're watching this video and you haven't seen the Alice camera before, I'll let you describe a bit more about it, but you've got a hugely successful Indiegogo campaign. I just checked it just before we came on the call. It's already reached £128,000, up over 644%. I think your original target was like £20,000. So yeah, tell me a bit about the campaign, a bit about the camera for anyone who doesn't know about it. I'm really excited about it, and I'm sure our viewers would love to know more.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. The Alice camera is it's an AI accelerated computational camera that works with your smartphone to make it much easier to shoot and edit content on an interchangeable lens camera. It was really built out of frustration with the lack of innovation and usability of traditional cameras. Both of us are using interchangeable lens cameras to stream this interview, and there are tons of other people out there who will be watching this call that also use interchangeable lens cameras. And people use interchangeable lens cameras for two reasons primarily. And the first is the large imaging sensor. And the second is that you can put better glass in front of that sensor so that better light hits the sensor and the quality of the image is greater. You know, everyone probably has a really good smartphone nowadays. I've got the 11 Pro, people have the 12 Pro. But you know, it's still quite unlikely that you will use your smartphone to create the best content that you want to create, to run your YouTube channel. It's very likely that you will use an interchangeable lens camera to do that. But there are some issues with them. They're still kind of quite primitive with their menu systems. They still use technology that's quite outdated. Transferring files can be a bit of a pain. Waiting for all that content to go over can be a pain. The ability to not edit the photo or the video on the device is also a huge sticking point for a lot of people. You know, sometimes I just want to make the clip a little bit smaller, or I want to increase the brightness or the sharpness or something after I've shot the footage, but obviously I can't because I need to transfer it to my computer. And so all of these issues kind of pent up quite a bit of frustration from our perspective. I'm a content creator, and I've always been a data scientist in the creative industries. And I've been building content and using cameras for some time, mainly to make video content. I'm not so much interested from a photography perspective, but my co-founder Liam is. He has kind of a deep interest in photography, and I think when he grew up, he was kind of dipping in and out of dark rooms and stuff like this. But he's also an electrical engineer and has built AI-embedded hardware systems for creatives. And when me and Liam met each other on a program called Entrepreneur First, we thought that the idea of building Alice was A, made sense, and B, was something that we could do together as two founders and put our skills together to build this product that can try and tackle some of these problems that I've mentioned. And there's other things that I haven't mentioned. I'm sure we'll talk about them in the interview.
When I first saw this, I emailed you after about 3 seconds of seeing it, because I thought this is targeted for someone like me who, you know, I love filmmaking, I love content creation, I love the gear and I love the tech, but like you say, there's just so many downsides, and they're only small downsides, but to each thing you have. So with the iPhone, I love it, it's great, I can take it out of my pocket, but I find that sometimes I just want that nice blurry background, or I want to just have different focal lengths that the iPhone doesn't provide. And then in the same sense, I've got an A7S III, fantastic camera, it's like $3,500, but it's big, it's heavy, it's you know, the file sizes are huge. It takes a while to get those you know, clips from your camera to your iPhone or your Mac or your iPad to edit. So this, I felt, really bridges the gaps for even people like me, content creators who, yeah, just literally want the best quality image, but they want to pair it with their phone. And I thought that was really exciting, because then you kind of get rid of all of the problems that you have. You can have that interchangeable lens, you can have that quick file transfer, you can upload that content really fast. You know, we've been at trade shows before and we've done stuff which is kind of newsworthy, so you want to get it out as quick as you possibly can. But with a an A7S III, you've got to download that footage, you've got to edit together in a decent editor, and it's not possible. So yeah, I've been super excited to see the progress so far with the Alice camera and what it can do. So in terms of the lenses, what lenses will it accept when you first launch it?
It uses the Micro Four Thirds lens mount. The reason we went with Micro Four Thirds is for a couple of reasons. So firstly, it's the smallest professional lens mount that you can have, which means that the lenses are compact, but also we can really reduce down the form factor. But secondly, it's a relatively open standard. So there are I think the widest variety of lenses are available on the Micro Four Thirds lens mount. In addition to that, it's also a free license. So for us as a company, we can use the lens mount without licensing it from Olympus and Panasonic. And we've been in touch with Olympus and Panasonic for the last 2 years. And we've we officially joined the Micro Four Thirds system standard at the end of 2020. So that means that all the Alice products are fully compliant with the standard. But in addition to that, the reason it's so flexible is because you can actually use different lenses from different manufacturers on the Micro Four Thirds lens mount with an adapter. So there are people who have old vintage lenses that are sitting on their shelves that, maybe they want to tap into some nostalgia from a couple of decades ago and use some of that vintage glass. But not just that. There are Canon lenses and Nikon lenses that you can adapt and use with the Micro Four Thirds system. So for a bunch of reasons, it's really flexible, and it allows us to enter the market without necessarily licensing a lens mount from Sony or wherever.
So talk me through kind of the user experience. So let's say you've bought the body. What is the kind of experience in terms of getting it out of your pocket, connecting to your phone? What kind of happens, and what is the experience there when you first use it?
Yeah, this is something that we are still working on, but we realize is fundamental and the most important element of the camera. So suppose you want to shoot footage with the Alice camera. The first misconception is that you need your smartphone for Alice to shoot content, and that's not true. You could just take Alice and press the shoot button, and it will go. It will start recording as soon as you turn it on. But if you want to see the footage as a viewfinder, then you would need to connect to your smartphone. Now, once you turn Alice on, it will firstly spin up a local Wi-Fi network, and it will then send a notification to your smartphone saying, kind of ideally, Alice is like kind of here, connect to it. Or if we can't do that directly, then you would have to go onto the Alice app. Once you press on the Alice app, the kind of signal to connect will be there. And then once you connect, it will be like almost connecting to a Wi-Fi hub that you have at home, like your BT or Virgin kind of hub. But because they're physically so close to each other, the theoretical data bandwidth that we can transfer between Alice and the smartphone is up to 500 megabits per second. So that's huge, and that means that the footage that you're going to be getting from Alice and seeing it on your smartphone is going to be really high quality. You will notice that your screen on your A7S III and the screen on my Sony A6600, the quality, even if you're shooting in 4K quality, the resolution on the screen is not 4K, or it's not HD. So the reason we decided to use to leverage the smartphone as the viewfinder and the control is simply because the screens on these things have become so good over the last, even the last couple of years have become so good that the quality that you'll be seeing in real time as the viewfinder will be great. But also these screens have become extremely tactile, and I do about 80% of my kind of day-to-day stuff on my phone now. Even editing videos. I'm doing a lot of short form videos, and I really enjoy editing like Instagram Reels and TikTok videos on my smartphone. And because these screens are so tactile, and Apple and Google and Samsung invest billions of dollars each year to make sure that the user experience of smartphones are really good, we decided that by being so close to the smartphone makes a lot of sense. But to answer your original question, yes. Once Alice and the smartphone are connected through that Wi-Fi network, you will then start to see all the footage that Alice is seeing. And you can also take them apart. So you could mount your camera across the other side of the room, and you'll be able to see what Alice is seeing on your smartphone. So you can have it detached. And this is really helpful because let's say you want to do a vlog, and if you want to control the screen on my Sony camera, I actually have to quickly go reach all the way to the back.
Yeah.
But I can't see what the buttons are on the back, of course. And if I want to increase the exposure, I'm going to have to fiddle around with my muscle memory to remember where everything is. But if you just had it on your screen, you could quickly just change the zoom or change a setting or adjust the aperture or whatever it might be. Just kind of.
What I like as well about that is also a lot of us are creating content for smartphones or for YouTube. So actually having kind of the content visible as you're recording on the phone, you get a real, I guess you're going to get a real good idea of what it's going to look like when you're finished. I guess you might want to do some color correction, but sometimes, if you look at some of the monitors and some of the cameras we have here, the footage when it gets to the computer is nothing like how it shoots, which is a bit frustrating at times. And I think as a newbie as well, if there's a lot of people getting into content creation, and they splash out a lot of money on some big cameras, but they're very confusing. A lot of big cameras, there's a lot of settings you have to understand. They're not, barely any of them some will call themselves point and shoots, but then anything but. There's a lot of settings to go through, 100 different modes that don't make much sense. I saw some of your user interface in some of your videos, and it looks really nice from what I could see. And I might be wrong here, but you kind of looked like you had like a simple view. If you're a kind of a beginner, you could just press record and fantastic. Or there's a pro mode too, so you can change ISO and aperture and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely, spot on. And so not only is the user experience from the connectivity with the camera and the device really important, but the user experience of the mobile application is also extremely important. So firstly, when we say AI, a lot of creatives, a lot of people get quite anxious about that word, and they think, oh my God, it's going to replace me. Just a side point. Firstly, the AI that we're building, we don't intend on replacing anyone. We intend on giving people kind of more control, in fact, over the AI. So sometimes that's a bit paradoxical, but sometimes people get anxious, and it's worth kind of clarifying that. But secondly, we thought really hard about the user experience. So in our team, we have, I'm a content creator. Liam's interested in photography. Vic, who is our chief operating officer, is a photographer. Ollie, who's one of our computational photography engineers, is also a photographer and built his own camera. The app designers that we're working with, Outfly, they have many photographers on their team. And so what we wanted to do was to design a software app system that was not completely alien to a traditional photographer or camera enthusiast, but was intuitive enough for a newbie, upcoming, young content creator that's grown up with a smartphone in their pocket all their lives. And trying to strike that balance and to think about the user journeys across both of those things has been challenging, but is something that we believe that we're solving properly and addressing properly. So the quick mode that you referenced is going to be very much like how you shoot an image on your smartphone. Okay. So if I get up the viewfinder on my phone and I can just push a button and it's kind of done. All the image stacking, the HDR, everything is done for you, and you don't have to think about it too much. Yeah. But creatives, especially people who operate cameras, want maximum control. They want the ability to change the exposure, the ISO, the aperture, the shutter speed at their will at any time when they want to. And so the pro mode of the app gives them that ability to change all of those parameters, but also allows them to override the deep learning and the AI that we've built into Alice. So they can turn it off completely if they wanted to and just have full manual control. They could keep some of the AI bits on if they wanted to. They can turn off the electronic image stabilization, or they can kind of crank it up or crank it down, depending on what they want. But an important thing to bear in mind is that we are still building out this functionality. A lot of it is still kind of in wireframes. It's still in user experience. We are kind of building dummy apps, and we're testing it with people to see whether the experience makes sense or not.
Yeah.
And so we've got a group of beta customers who we're working with on that. But yes, Pro mode, quick mode. Quick mode allows smartphone experience. Pro mode gives you maximum control if you want it.
So that's one thing I'm quite excited about as well. I mean, when you buy a camera like a GH5, let's say, even though there are firmware updates and small updates along the way, primarily the camera stays the same. You might get a little bit of improvement to autofocus or something, but you end up with the same camera and it doesn't change. And what I think frustrates me about some cameras is you'll buy a camera, almost the identical model will come out again with a slightly different number behind it, and there'll be all these new features and different autofocus detections. So will we have the ability in the Alice camera for the camera just to be constantly being updated and get better and better over time?
Yeah. So this is a huge underlying frustration of the camera industry. Now, this is a side point, and we got nothing against the camera industry or the people, the camera companies. But when you have an industry run by mainly 5 big Japanese conglomerates, their incentive to kind of innovate and to offer some of these features has been really lackluster over the last decade, and is a bit frustrating to be honest with you, because as you mentioned, some of my menu system in my Sony camera has not been upgraded since the last 5 years, 10 years. It's still atrocious. But with Alice, because it's so integrated to the smartphone, and because we're building an app for Alice on the smartphone, the software updates will be much more incremental and much more similar to the types of updates that you get on mobile apps, compared to the firmware updates that you tend to get on cameras. And those firmware updates are typically once a year, if you're lucky, once every 2 years, and they're like really big kind of updates that happen at a really slow pace. Alice, on the other hand, will be much more incremental, similar to a smartphone. But importantly, what I haven't spoken about is we are looking to open source elements of that interface. So the connection between the Alice camera and mobile app developers will be open. So that means that if you are a mobile app developer, or if you are someone that wants to build an augmented reality app, or if you're someone that works for the BBC or in broadcasting, and you want to build your own app with your own custom settings, go ahead. Like, that's not our problem. All we're doing is providing you the documentation to be able to build software for Alice. But we're keeping that kind of open, and that's one of our huge kind of unique selling points compared to traditional systems, which is we are approaching it by being open, and we can, because we are the new kids on the block. We believe in open source technology, kind of revolutionizing access to camera tech and imaging systems, and we understand that creators want that level of access. There's actually a community online called Magic Lantern. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I have heard,
Yeah, and so Magic Lantern is essentially a group of 200,000 people on a forum that have tried to hack the Canon EOS operating system. And and it just shows you that just illustrates the level of frustrations that people have. They want to be able to just move the box onto the left, or they want to move the histogram over here. And we will be doing incremental updates, but that interface will also be open.
I know what you mean about the Sony menus on the A6400 we had. I know quite a bit about cameras. I've used them for years. And even when I switched from, I think it was a Canon to the Sony, I was so confused by the menu system. And so many things were in, if no one's ever seen a Sony menu system, the older ones, there's pages and pages and pages, and then blocks, and then pages within that. It's so hard to find something. So I think the simpler the better. And I was just going to bring up a point as well. We speak to a lot of people in the BBC and Sky News and ITV, and they're filming a lot of the news pieces on iPhones, and now just having a cold shoe mount attaching a microphone. So, do you think it could be really good for those kind of industries where they need to film on the go, quick turnaround stuff, but now they actually can film with a decent lens,
Yeah, absolutely. So we're part of a government-led accelerator program run by an institution called the Digital Catapult. And the Digital Catapult is an arm's length government institution that is kind of an innovation hub based in London. And we've gone through 2 of their programs. The first one was called the Machine Intelligence Garage, where we experimented with doing artificial intelligence on device, on the edge. And that's what we're really doing with Alice. We're running ML and AI on Alice. But we then moved into a second program, which is called the 5G Testbed Accelerator. And what we've been doing over the last 6 months is we've been working very closely with 5G technology. And the reason that's helpful is because, firstly, because we are using smartphones as the kind of control interface for Alice. Smartphones nowadays have 5G capabilities, especially if you have a 5G chip. So that means that you can stream content at a much higher data bandwidth than 4G. So one thing that we're actually putting into practice and we've been demoing to a select group of people is the ability to shoot footage on Alice in the middle of Camden Town and send that footage directly to YouTube using a 5G connection without any wires, so cool. high definition. And if you can imagine that being a possibility within the not so distant future, this opens up not just a whole bunch of benefits for creators, but for people like the BBC or news journalists who don't want to get a camera crew around with them. And a lot of news agencies are cut for budgets nowadays.
Yeah.
So what you have is these solo journalists that have their iPhones and their iPhone rigs, and they're doing a lot of that recording on iPhones. But if you gave them the option to have slightly higher quality, I'm sure they would take it. And this is what we want to do with Alice, which is start opening up those conversations and doing some pilot tests with the likes of the BBC and Sky News, and saying, hey guys, this is a Alice camera. It's developed, down the road in King's Cross. This is what it does. Give it a go next time you're at Parliament Square trying to shoot some footage, and try and get it up live if you fancy it. And we want to do some of those pilot tests as well. And the other area we see it being quite big is with sports streaming.
Yeah.
Or kind of like school kids and like local sports. So we had a conversation with a guy who runs a company called Touch Tennis, and what he does essentially is. Are you familiar with like David Lloyd gyms? Basically?
Yeah.
So he like rocks up to like David Lloyd gyms and essentially has 2 GoPros on each end of like these tennis courts, and he somehow made the system that allows him to stream it live on Facebook Live, and like tons of people just like tune in to like watch like their mates playing tennis or whatever, and we can see live streaming for that level of sport being like quite interesting and quite fun, but that's just like one example in a bunch of other examples. But doing broadcasting is very interesting.
Yeah, it's like you say. I didn't even really consider that, but like you said, with the 5G built into the phones, that it's just changing the game completely, isn't it? Because everything you need is literally in that phone. And I think that's what a lot of people may, when they see the Alice camera, may not realize it is just much more than a lens attached to your phone. It's all of the stuff the phone could do on top of that. I think that's really gonna just make it so much easier. Every part that you think about, the editing, the filming, the broadcasting, the file transfers, everything is made 10 times easier than it currently is if you have any of those things separately. So in terms of that, I mean, what kind of mounts will you have on the camera, if any, and microphone inputs, headphone inputs? Will you be including anything like that, or will you use the iPhone or Android phones?
Yeah, good question. So there is a headphone jack, which means that if you have a Rode mic, you can plug it in and stick it in the cold shoe at the top, or if you have any other mic, you can use that lapel mic or whatever. there is the possibility of, so there is not inbuilt audio, and one of the reasons for that is to keep costs down. But there might be the possibility of doing some, if theoretically, if we open source that communication between Alice and the smartphone, there is some possibility for the option of the smartphone's microphone to also be used to record that audio content.
Yes.
Similarly, a lot of people ask us about flash. They say, oh, is there a hot shoe? I want to put a flash in there. And my question is, who really uses flash anymore? I've got a Loom Cube just here putting some light on me, but I don't use a dedicated flash unit on my camera, really. I think it's a bit of an old school photographer kind of mentality, DSLR mentality. But the point I want to make is we've had some discussions to see if it's possible to use the smartphone's flash, for example, as a compromise. In terms of mounts, so there is a cold shoe at the top, and there's a screw at the bottom, so you can kind of screw in your Joby stick. But we saw what Sony did with the FX3, and they've got kind of two screws at the top, so that you can start to make kind of really cool elaborate rigs. And we've had those open discussions. We're like, wouldn't it be really cool if someone could put like a rig on the side? So we haven't yet gone ahead with that decision, and frankly, that's just a conversation we've been having this week. But yeah, at the moment, it's just a cold shoe, screw at the bottom, and a headphone jack and a micro SD slot. Also USB-C, which is more universal. So you could use your charging port from your MacBook to charge Alice, and that's fine. Instead of having complicated wires and having a wire that sometimes I need to have my Sony wire to be able to do the live stream. Because if I use another USB-C, it doesn't work, and it's really kind of complicated. So yeah, the idea fundamentally is to be as universal as possible, whether that's through the lens mount, whether that's through the charging, whether that's through the Wi-Fi, and even the way in which Alice grips the smartphone, because it attaches to the back of your phone. It's possible to use phones as small as the iPhone 6 all the way up to the iPhone Pro Max, both iOS and Android. So, the concept of being universal.
It is a tricky thing, as a business owner myself, speaking to people, and I can imagine camera people are probably I don't mean this in a mean way, not the hardest people to please, but you've got so many different types of people, and not everyone's the same. Photographers are completely different to videographers, and content creators are different to the pros. So I can imagine you're getting it left, right, and center of what things you should have and shouldn't have, and it is hard. Anyone who's run a product business before will know you kind of get pulled in lots of different ways, but you obviously need to start somewhere and then see how that goes. So is there any sort of challenges you've had, or any things that you're thinking you definitely won't include in the first version, or things like that?
Yeah, and it's a really good point that you raise. With such a, firstly, the camera industry has been built in such a way that all of this variety and differences of interests and these groups have kind of naturally occurred, mainly because the camera industry has been engineered in this way. Canon, if you buy a Canon, you have to buy that lens mount system. If you buy a Sony, you have to invest in the E-mount system. You buy a Nikon, you have to, and just the way in which the industry has been engineered means that you get these pockets of individuals that have their own differences, like kind of naturally. But one of the things that people have pushed back quite a bit with is the resolution of the sensor. So people, it's 10.7 11 megapixel sensor, which is quite similar actually to the resolution that you have on your Sony A7S III.
This is only like a 12 megapixel.
But with the video quality that you've been shooting with it for your YouTube channel, that it's splendid, it's spectacular, it's gorgeous. And I think the whole megapixel discussion is quite juvenile, actually, to be honest with you. And I think the smartphone companies haven't helped either, because what you have is mainly smartphone companies based in Asia, such as Samsung, Huawei, OnePlus, and all the others, that seem to be talking a lot about how many megapixels they have on their 120, 50. It doesn't mean anything, because Apple's decided, you know what, we're not engaging in the megapixel war. We're just sticking to 12. We're fine. Similarly, with cameras, bigger megapixels is great, and it is fine if you're a stills photographer and you do need that because you want to blow up an image, or because you want to put that video on a cinema or screen, or some really high fidelity LCD screen. But if you're just putting it up on YouTube or on Instagram, firstly, the bit rate, and this is the other thing that again, the camera industry has cultivated this very unique characteristic where everyone's so obsessed by kind of specs that it doesn't really make sense, which is, a lot of people say, does it do 16-bit? Does it do 14-bit? Does it do 12-bit? The answer is, it can theoretically do all of those things, but we compress it down to 8-bit because the maximum bit rate that you can put up on YouTube is 8-bit. And similarly with Instagram. So it doesn't matter if you have 16 or 14-bit color depth in your footage. When you upload it onto YouTube, it's presented 8-bit footage, which doesn't really make sense.
No, I was going to say, it's definitely, you see that a lot in the comments, this battle of, I kind of call it the battle of the spec sheet, because like you say, it doesn't really mean anything. We have it with microphones as well. I see it in the comments when we first got this camera, and it's like, I mean, take the A7S III. It's probably one of the best cameras I've ever owned. It's got a 12 megapixel sensor. I believe my iPhone 12 mini has a 12 megapixel sensor, but they are not the same. And I've had Android phones in the past that have had 24 megapixel, 48 megapixel sensors and had rubbish image quality. So I think you really do have to base it on the final image quality. If you were just to be put in a room with a TV and looked at 2 images, what is best? That's really all it comes down to. It could be a million megapixels. If it looks rubbish, it looks rubbish. So
So
that's one
of the pushbacks. Basically, we don't try and dive into these debates or battles, because it doesn't really make sense. It's not really healthy, I don't think. And so we've stuck to our guns, and we know that the sensor that we're using has very large pixels. It's a very sophisticated sensor. It's back illuminated CMOS, quad Bayer structure, and large pixels with low resolution, which means that it's theoretically very, very good in low light situations.
That's good.
But also, the reason for the low megapixels is because it allows us to run our computational photography pipeline very effectively and efficiently. So if we were to run our computational photography pipeline on 40 megapixels, the number of calculations you have to do on 40 megapixels versus 11 is magnitude greater, much greater. So that means that your battery power is therefore drained, you use more heat, the lag increases. So if you look at some of the best cinema cameras, whether it's by Blackmagic or whether it's by even the FX3.6 or even the A7S III, they have low resolutions for a reason. And the image quality, especially with video at 4K, is excellent. And we're using a sensor that's very similar to the ones that was used in the GH5S and the Blackmagic Pocket. So
cool.
with the quality, is gonna be good. And one of the things we haven't actually spoken about, Mark, is the cost of all of this. So firstly, starting out as a creator, it's not necessarily about the gear to begin with. It's more about getting into those, getting into those motions of recording yourself in front of front of camera, getting the right lighting, getting the right audio, getting the right narrative, getting the right message, and you can do that with your smartphone. You can do that
100%.
But if you want to create content if you're a content creator in 2018, 2019, 2020, the type of investment that you would need to make just to get into kind of an entry-level system. So let's take the Sony A6400 or the 6600, which is what I have.
Mm.
I had to pay when I bought my A600 brand new. I think I paid something like 1,800 for the body, and then I spent £300 or £350 for my Sigma 16 1.4, and then I bought the kit lens as well, which is 500 quid. So we're looking at like £2,500.
A lot of money.
Kind of, which is quite a bit. You can buy secondhand stuff, and that's fine as well. But if you start to look at some of the new cameras that Sony are releasing, like the A7S III, like the one that you have, or the FX3, you're looking at £3,000-4,000 for the body, right?
Yeah. Just for the body, yeah.
And with Alice, we're running the campaign at the moment, and we were offering a special price of £550 for the body only. It will retail at £750. So it's interchangeable lenses. So the ZV-1, I think, is around £750.
Yeah.
And we think that that's so much more accessible, especially if you can integrate with your smartphone, than investing in one of those systems that's quite expensive. So that was another motivation, was to really get the cost, something that's more realistic. Obviously, paying £750 for a body and a lens on top of that with your smartphone is still expensive.
Yeah.
But it's much more realistic. It's much more,
No, I think it's a really good price point, and like you say, for that kind of price, you're in the Sony ZV-1 territory and all that kind of stuff. But you're already carrying your phone with you for one, so you've got that kind of processing power there. Why not use it? But I imagine having the Alice will feel smaller and lighter than carrying like an extra additional A60-400 with you. And like I say, the lenses, the micro four thirds lenses are quite cheap. I know Lewis here at Editors Keys, he loves the little vintage lenses, so he's picked up a few of them for I think like £50 on Amazon. So I guess you could start with them. And yeah, I think it's a great price point. And as we've talked about in the start, you're saving elements of your workflow because you haven't got to then take the SD card reader out, buy a hub, plug that in, get your footage on your Mac. You can literally just download it, get it on your iPhone, back up LumaFusion or iMovie or something, and just get that footage out straight away. So you've got kind of cost savings there too. So I think it's a really good price point. And I mean, the success of your Kickstarter, your Indiegogo campaigns really, I guess, proved that. How does it feel to be on £130,000 already?
Yeah, no, it definitely feels great, and there's a lot of hard work that's happened behind the scenes to get to where we are, and we have firstly an incredible team that we managed to put together to build this type of product for our target audience and for our community. But secondly, we've been blessed with so much support from a range of accelerator programs. We're currently based out of the UCL University Incubator. We have tons of mentors. We have our product designers are based in the UK in Bournemouth. Our software UX people are based in London. Our manufacturers are based in Nottingham. A huge element of Alice is being made in Britain and being built and designed and thought through and manufactured in Britain. And we think that this is a wonderful country to be building such a product. Because we're not obsessed by the tech specs. We're not obsessed about whacking in ISO numbers that people can't even understand. We're not obsessed about having ridiculous amounts of kind of all this jargon that people don't understand. What we're interested in is empowering the next generation of creators to tell the story that they want to tell, whatever that story is, and get it to their audience as quickly as possible without the faff of learning how to operate a pro camera. And that's our mission, and that's kind of quite clear from what we're trying to do. So yeah, we're really proud to be able to get Alice out there and for people to understand what we're trying to do.
Brilliant. So if people want to find out more about yourself or about Alice Camera, or even if they want to pre-order one, where can they find out a bit more about the products and yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So head over to alice.camera, which is our main website, where there's tons of information. And if you just type, if you go onto the Indiegogo website and type Alice Camera, then you also be able to see our campaign page, which has even more information about who we are, what Alice can do for you in particular, but also what our roadmap looks like and what we're going to be doing over the next coming months to really get Alice into your hands as quickly as possible. So please do check them out.
Thanks very much. And if you're watching this video on YouTube and you've got any questions, please do leave them below and I'll make sure we forward them on to you. So I'm sure we'll hear from you again and speak to you again as the campaign progresses. But just want to say thanks so much for joining us. And it's just an incredible product. I'm really excited to get my hands on one, and I'm sure we'll be using it here at Editors Keys when it's launched. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on, and really great chatting to you today. Yeah, absolutely. And we can't wait to get you one later this year to review and to play around with.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Yeah, I'll catch you soon.